This is the Emotion Connection, where you'll experience health through feeling. Explore emotion from a different perspective and learn how to use your emotions to improve your day-to-day life. Introducing your host, founder of the Emotion Research Institute and creator of Emotional Strength, Sharon Fay. Sharon heads up a successful business empowering leaders to bring about organisational development and cultural change. Get your senses ready as we delve into the many facets of emotion together. Over to Sharon.
Hello, I'm Sharon Fay. Emotion is my thing. Today's podcast is about parenting with emotional strength. And the structure today is I'm going to share my lived experience of being a parent in the 70s. And parents always want to do the right thing. The different types of parenting styles, we're going to look at the punitive parenting style and the emotional strength parenting style as a contrast. I was a young girl when I became a mother for the first time. I didn't really know what being a mother meant, or how to be a mother, or what a mother was supposed to do. All I knew was that this baby was going to be dependent on me, and that felt very overwhelming. I didn't have a healthy parent role model. I didn't have any babies or children around me when I was growing up. My own baby was the first baby I ever held. And giving birth in those days was very different to recent practices. I was following instructions from the experts, the nurses. In preparation for giving birth, my legs were placed up in the air and strapped in stirrups. It was so painful. I couldn't move around. I was just stuck in one spot. I still don't know how babies were born with a mother flat on her back with her legs up in the air like that. Fortunately, though, giving birth was relatively straightforward for me. I had a vaginal birth with only a few stitches. But that was probably at a time when vaginal births were the norm. The nursery was an interesting place back then. As a nervous new mum, I did everything I was told as I didn't know what to do myself. And the conventional wisdom of the day was 4-hour breastfeeding. There was no demand feeding. Even when the baby was screaming with hunger, the baby had to wait the 4 hours before the nurse would bring a distressed baby to the mother to feed. There was no space for mother and the baby to get to know each other. As soon as the baby had finished suckling, with a quick cuddle, the nurses took the baby away, back to the nursery, so mother could rest. I didn't want to rest. I just wanted to cuddle my baby. I wasn't even permitted to change my baby's nappy. Cloth nappies were used back then, and they were held together by large safety pins. The nurses didn't want an inexperienced mother like me changing her baby's nappy, as she may prick the baby with the safety pin. Consequently, the first time I changed my own baby's nappy was when I went home. Not ideal. Recent birthing practices have changed dramatically, thank goodness, but the underlying assumptions remain the same in the hospital because new mothers still report feeling judged and that the new mum is treated as if they're quite useless. And my experience of being a mother is always wanting to do the right thing. And most of you listening who have had that experience of becoming a parent for the first time might notice that that is certainly true for you as well. You wanted to do the right thing. And parents typically want to be a good parent, whatever good means. And the daunting prospect after birth is that the baby is completely dependent on you. So many questions went through my head. What if I don't know what to do or how to breastfeed? What if I don't have enough milk was a common one. How will I know what my baby needs? The list of questions goes on forever in parents' minds. It might be said that the level of anxiety that parents experience in the early stages of parenthood sets the scene for the level of concern and worry that parents have about doing the right thing by their children as they go through the developmental milestones over the lifespan. Humans are so adaptive. We get into habits easily. When parents start off being highly anxious about doing the right thing by their child, the child becomes fearful of the world around them. With this beginning, you'll not be surprised when your teenager is suffering from high anxiety. I remember being so critical of myself as a mother, but I didn't realise my own silent voice of criticism inside my head impacted my 4 children, even though those words were not spoken. In retrospect, I noticed that I developed perfectionistic tendencies, and this came from always wanting to do the right thing. And when you become perfectionistic, no one can do the right thing, including yourself. When I was attached to getting it right, just wanted to get it right, I became a less effective parent. I know now that the very notion of wanting to do the right thing ended up being wrong somehow. And when I'm talking about wrong, and my regular listeners will know, I'm not talking about wrong as the truth. I'm talking about how wrong we feel in our own judgment of ourselves. And yet, despite my own criticism of myself as a mother, I still say that raising 4 children, I had 4 under 6, were the happiest days of my life. As a full-time stay-at-home mum, I took my role very seriously. So when we talk about parenting styles, there are many forms of parenting style. I'll mention a few of them today. But I wasn't aware at the time. I've got a lot of insight in retrospect, as you would imagine. I can see the parenting style in the 1970s was quite punitive. It was common for parents to smack their children for being naughty. I put naughty in inverted commas. People growing up in that era might remember the threat of the wooden spoon and even the gesture of going to the wooden spoon drawer. Children would scatter and everyone would fall into line and follow the rules, even seeing the mother going to get the wooden spoon. It wasn't even out of the drawer yet and the children had changed their behaviour. And the conventional wisdom at that time was of strict discipline. This type of parenting was not taught openly, of course, it was implied. And the underlying assumption was that parents needed to control their children. Behavioural change was the focus. If your children were well behaved and used good manners, that meant that you're a good parent. If your child sits quietly and doesn't interrupt the adults while they're speaking, the parent is doing a good job. This type of thinking extended to parent groups, and the child that sat up first within the group were very, very good, and they were better than the others. The mothers became very competitive about whose child would take their first steps. If your child walked first, that means that your child is more advanced than the others, and somehow that idea extended to, if my child reaches milestones before the rest of the group, I'm a better mother. Interesting. I wonder if that still goes on today. This type of thinking dominated mothers' groups and parent conversations. Given those assumptions, it is understandable that parents were motivated to have their children demonstrate good behaviour, so the parents looked good as well. Parents would feel better about themselves when their children were well behaved. This assumption was prevalent in teaching as well. Teachers needed to control their classrooms. Controlling children was implemented by parents and teachers using rigid rules and reward and punishment. Reward and punishment seemed to work, or at least the children behaved themselves temporarily. Over the long term, However, this type of parenting and teaching didn't work so well as children became fearful and angry. There was no space for emotional feelings. Children started acting out and the punishments became harsher, and this became a vicious cycle. Over the decades, of course, parents moved to the other extreme and became softer and nicer to their children. The rules became unclear and blurred. The language changed from "go to your room" to "go to time out." The idea was that I don't want to raise my kids the way my parents did. However, this was the same model in slightly different packaging. The problem was that parents became confused and ended up leaving their body, and it became a laissez-faire parenting style. And that was difficult for children to navigate because there are no clear boundaries in laissez-faire, no clear direction. The rules change from moment to moment. One moment it's yes and the next moment it's no, and the parent's very indecisive. This hands-off approach was confusing to parents, so they checked out and left their bodies. Children became confused as well, and they needed clear boundaries and consequences for their actions. And parents in that space were very hesitant to talk about consequences. So parenting with emotional strength is a bit different in that it's like an attitude. And we can see parenting styles reflected in changes in society over time. And at the moment, we've got some parents who are interested in parenting a different way. They are motivated to become present and attentive. They are curious and willing to take feedback and learn along the way. They are interested in learning what it takes to live life fully. There are other parents today who are still too busy or frantic. These parents haven't had the experience or don't know about the health benefits of being in your body. When you use emotional strength as a framework for life, you have a different experience. Remember, the emotional strength definition is the ability to respond in an open and vulnerable way in the face of intense emotional experience. So this is quite difficult to put into practice because when you're facing a challenge or a threat, you want to curl up into the protective stance in your body. And this is saying, well, even though you feel attacked and you feel under threat, you open and show some vulnerability while that attack is happening. So that's really difficult to do, and it'd be good for you to practice that. And when emotional strength is applied to parenting style, the first thing is to change your attitude toward emotion. From this perspective, emotion is just emotion. When you judge your emotion, it is just your judgment. It is not the truth that emotion is good or bad. It's just a judgment. And one could say I'm extremely experienced with raising children because I raised 4 children originally, and then I raised my 2 grandsons later. My 4 children were born in the 20th century. My grandsons were born in the 21st century. Wow, what a difference moving from punitive parenting style to emotional strength parenting style. And the first thing to notice was the underlying assumptions from one style to another. The assumptions that I made the first time around was that I needed to be in control and teach my children. The second time around was more about choice. I also noticed a change in language from a blaming, right, wrong, good, bad, success, failure, good marks, poor marks. From that kind of language and those kinds of assumptions to not that. I noticed that it was a more relaxed atmosphere the second time. Our ups and downs in daily life were normal and an opportunity to learn. There was less criticism of myself inside me and more compassion for our journey. Transparency was the key. There was nothing wrong and no one was in trouble, even if it felt like that in the moment. There were always opportunities. When one of us felt low, the others were attentive. When we exceeded our capacity to feel and act it out, we knew what was happening. When one of us left our body, someone was there to help them back. I found this environment a very safe place, although not easy at times. I also look at anxiety differently now. I say that when parents build capacity and connect to their anxiety in their body, they will not need to use reward and punishment. Having said that, it is tempting to lose it at times, and it takes effort and commitment to bring yourself back and make a different choice in the next moment. The emotional strength parenting style is not easy, and it's very rewarding. You feel proud when you're in your body and you're conscious that you can make another choice in the next moment. My intention is to open the path to another way, not to make emotional strength parenting style seem like the best thing ever. From this perspective, we need to set clear boundaries with our children and be consistent in reminding them of such boundaries during challenging times. We need to be open about the consequences of actions, not as a punishment. Rather, it gives them options to choose their course of action when they know the consequences of those actions. As parents, we need to be consistent within ourselves by saying and doing the same thing. We don't want to parent by saying one thing and doing another. We need to teach our children about family values and what is important to our family, and remind teenagers when they forget. So you can start with being aware of your tone and language in the house. Remember, awareness is the first step to improving your parenting style. And I'll give you some homework at the end. To recap, I talked briefly about my lived experience of parenting 4 children in the latter part of the 20th century, and again parenting my 2 grandsons in the 21st century. And I pointed out that parents always wanting to do the right thing by their children and often getting it wrong, and this is in your own mind, remember. The characteristics of punitive parenting style from a lived experience, including assumptions and language. The characteristics of emotional strength parenting style, including the assumptions and boundaries. So your homework this week is to notice your own parenting style when you're engaging with your children. Notice your tone of voice, your language, your actions, or even acting out moments. Write down the things you notice about your parenting so you can tell me what you discovered. Next week, the podcast is going to be on emotion connection in leadership. Now that's an interesting one. Those who are in leadership roles and those of you who are not in leadership roles, because leading isn't always from the front. So that'll be an interesting discussion. See you next time.
Well, that's a wrap. The Emotion Connection is produced by Sharon Fay and her team at the Emotion Research Institute. With a vision to help people feel, this is just one way we're spreading the word. From our hub in Perth, Western Australia, our goal is to advance global research on human emotion and bring together the world's best scholars to conduct rigorous research into emotion all in one place. Would you like to help? Do you have feedback or suggestions? We'd love to hear from you. Visit emotionresearch.com.au to get in touch, sign up to our newsletter and learn more. If you'd like to support our work, make a donation. Remember, your generosity fuels our vision and contributions over $2 Australian are tax deductible. See you next time.